Um, so, uh, you know, as time goes, I've been seeing and the way my brain is just slowly just evaporating and going into a state of nonsensicalness logic because of how they manipulate me to think. So let me just start from the beginning. I identify myself as a TI, target individual. So that means that I'm being manipulated in different disturbing ways. And I'm a TI who is experiencing the V2K, meaning they do all the disturbing manipulation that you can imagine, which includes mind manipulations of all sorts, even the body. And I'm also getting radiated. And my body is definitely, I'm seeing sign of physical reaction to whatever they're doing to me via these radiations and direct energy technology. Um, I've talked about how they've been manipulating my memories and try to make me subscriptive to whatever manipulations they make me have. And thankfully, testimonials from others have validated me so many ways. But on top of that, I've been validated in other ways that just sometimes that's when I started thinking about these things in almost biblical ways. You know, and like unfortunately, I don't want to be tortured, and I don't want to. I want to be myself, but I will never be myself. I'm surrounded by perps who are contracted by these governmental entities in the intelligence community to implement these tactics to get the result they need to in order to improve this technology. I fully understand that this is an R&D type of program where they're developing this technology and they have tactics and protocols they implement on target individuals, and it's kind of systematic, right? And they do the same thing to a lot of target individual. With me, of course, they kind of custom a little bit things around, but the overall tactics are the same. And so, for me, for example, they've been doing this disturbing pedophilia things where they make me look at children in different pedophilia ways, sexual ways, and try to make you acceptive of that. And for me, that's been ongoing since day one. Um, as they do that, it's funny because they like to create a psyop, right? They try to present themselves as something, and they try to gaslight you. Just 2 seconds ago, I was delivered some food, but before that person knocked, they wait for something to happen in your brain. They manipulate a way of thinking and to try to vilify you and to be like, oh, we caught this stuff, we saw this, knock on the door. And it's things that come up, right? They bring up. There's a moment I remember before August 19, 2019. I remember I was in Harlem. I'm living in New York, right? I was in Harlem and I was walking to my place at the time and somebody just bumped and looked at this person. This person looked like a young adult, like 20 some years old, and she was white, right? And there's a lot of universities around, there's Columbia University, not other university. So you will see by the way she looks, by her, the way she appears, that she's not from the neighborhood. She's definitely from either she's a student here or she's a young professional around there. So most likely a young professional, a student. She bumped on me, and I smiled and I excused myself. I said, "Sorry, excuse me," right? And as I smiled, asking to excusing myself, being polite, she looks at me, and she just like, she becomes very like her face lights up, and immediately I realize, oh, she probably think that I'm trying to flirt with her. That's not the case. I'm just being polite. So immediately when I see that, I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Just let me just go, and I walk away. Now they've been trying to be like, oh, I see, that's proof because you see you did. And they try to make me imagine her to be an underage person, which is just most likely not. I don't know her age, but based on what I was seeing, she looks like she's more of like a college student that goes to schools around this area, right? Just because also her demographic, her racial background, this is not where you live, right? Like that's not where you're from. You might be living here now, but this is not, your family doesn't live here. And so it's they've been trying to be like, no, because she's kind of petite, they can just make me imagine her to be any age, right? And so they'd be like, you see, that's proof in whatever. And they make me imagine her to be a very young person, like a kid of some sort, when I think she's a young person, but a young adult person. And somebody just knock on the door and try to make me nervous. I'm like, okay, before I go to the door, I go and I listen to this there was an article that came up in 2021, December 2021, calling out the issue of pedophilia in these entities that are actually in charge of this. So intelligence community, there've been patterns of a lot of pedophilia thing going on there, and it's been not covered as much as it should be, but it's been, BuzzFeed is notable, you know entity to talk about this. So I know this person wanted me to be like, oh my gosh, we caught you. And I'm like, before I go open up there, let me listen to the actual reality. Like, reality. Like, these people want to create a false reality. Me, in me, because this is part of the game, but they know that I know the reality of things. You actually, those entities that are investigating are filled with pedophiles, and actually, this is not an investigation, this is a human experimentation going on. So I play and listen to, like, why is there so many pedophiles in these entities? Right, CIA agent raping kids and stuff. So I go there, and you can see him just be like, oh, "You're so sick," and feel uncomfortable at the same time. I'm like, and I wait, and I'm listening. He start playing music, try to cover that up, and try to escape from reality. Now, the reason why I'm saying this story is because they try to make you accept a false reality. They try to make you believe something that you're not, and they use gaslighting methods to try to make you accept, because what's happening today is you are forced to experience things that are not naturally happening. Perceptions are manipulated in a way that's very pedophilia centric. Another thing they've been doing with me is they try to find ways to make this manipulation look valid, right? And they're like, oh, and I talked about it yesterday, in 2014 you followed this person on Snapchat, right? 9 years ago you followed this person on Snapchat, and that person looked like she was an adult, very much so. If you look at her, actually, yes, there was a whole thing, because I still can't imagine that, but she looked very much older than her age, and I followed her in that time, 2014. And so they're like, you see, that's proof. You see, you see what we're just matching. You follow her, and every time I look at her picture, I'm like, okay, yeah, I am. But that's the thing. And they even try to manipulate memories to try to make it seem like you should have known, and they try to add things to things that didn't happen, adding like things that they wanted me to imagine that she posted, falsifying memories in order to create this false reality. And then around you, as you can hear, this is like intimidating tactics to try to get you to accept these pedophilia things they do to people, when the reality is these people are actually working for entities with a lot of pedophiles, but at the same time, they have been using the pedophilia type of torture as a systematic torture tactic to break down the target individual. It's part of their protocol tactics. So reality is something they try to escape, because they try to remove reality from the target individual to make that individual accept this false reality. They use all kinds of gaslighting methods. The reality is also that they torture children and women, doing horrible things, and they're not monsters looking people. They're everyday people who just been contracted to do these nasty things, which I'm so thankful that I didn't have to live this life. But I'm glad that I can say things like that and feel dignified, and instead of seeing that men who try to like, oh, you're sick, and then feel so uncomfortable when I bring up the reality of things, the fact that there's actually a lot of pedophiles and this is CIA entities. So I will not let them escape. I think my purpose on this planet at this point is for these people who wanted to escape into this false reality, is to make them understand when the day comes, this is the reason.
In 2015, I began to experience what some call V2K, or voice to skull. This involves the projection of voices, noises, and music directly into my mind to communicate with me in real time and at the speed of thought. And it also includes the manipulation of thoughts, emotions, and perceptions in the person's mind. Additionally, the targeting is all highly perverted and sexual, as well as destructive and violent. I can be free from this torture. Every day has been a miracle of survival. I also experience what is referred to as malodorance, This is the alteration of the smell sensation so that I am often made to smell various things, including smoke, burning, dirty diaper, or baby powder, which they sometimes combine with the pedophilia type of torture, including the threat.
They're trying to take over my mind, putting thoughts of pedophilia. It's disgusting, disgusting. Take this whole thing into account so much and make it so dramatic. It is dramatic. It's somebody trying to end my life. It's somebody trying to end who I am as a person. It's somebody trying to take over my mind, putting thoughts of pedophilia. This disgusting, disgusting, disgusting things. You saw where I was going with that first word. Disgusting things that I don't even want to talk about because it makes me sick. I don't even like those words in my mind. But it is what it is. So I have no choice now but to acknowledge that there are people in my surroundings or whatever they're doing. I don't know how they do it. I don't care. I don't know if it's through weapons. I don't know. I don't.
What I said, playing with my dog, so that attacks continue. I don't let them get me. Today they continue with the programming of perversion, but this time they are aiming in the use of people, better said young people, also children and homosexuals. When I aggravated them, I usually called demeaning names, and one of them is referring to homosexuals. For me, all of the slaves are misfits, society haters, scumbags, etc. No, I don't have anything personal against them, homosexuals, but as my way to aggravate the slaves, and since they love to use children for the torture and stalking, street theater etc. Especially teenagers for the stalking at close range with an attitude, they are using them during my sleep in the perversion.
Any part of the body. This technology can be used to sexually manipulate the target. It can make the target feel sexual arousal, or it can sort of turn off the
occasion. I was told I was going to be shot in the face, and it was an older guy. He was like really, really disgruntled and pissed off. Yeah, she's going to get shot in the face. Sound like an angry ass old person. Then a couple of days later, a female said the same thing. Don't get shot in the face. Stupid shit like that. But what I really noticed is with the Voice of Skull, it's a bunch of females. And I'm like, bro.
Able to impose any information on the brain of a person, presumably by some kind of waves, which in the mind take the form of voices, thoughts and images and imagination. In addition to this kind of implanting information that they need, they manipulate the psyche so that the information is written into your memory. Then by stimulating the certain regions in the brain, they can retrieve this information and present it as your own memory. This is the conclusion that can be made judging by the influence they have been making on me with their psychotronic weapons, for example artificial thoughts, imagination, and mental torture.
8 billion brains on the planet, potentially. Read them. Marines. Underwater.
How do you explain this is happening to Len? How do you rationalize it?
Come in private. Hold on.
Okay, yeah.
Can I talk? Here's how I do my studies, and I wanted to find the commonalities, but I have to throw away the ones I'm uncertain about that are true targets. Maybe there's natural schizophrenia, there's a whole bunch of chemical imbalances,
right,
etc.
Right.
These weapons can actually induce and mimic all those diseases and effects. But the conversations, the scripts they're called, are always the same. I've heard them all. They're slightly tailored for each individual, but they're scripts. And they're meant to confuse the very derogatory. That's just typical breakdown. If you've ever been to boot camp, you're a worm until you're part of the team. And why would you want to break down the ego of that person? To rebuild it. So this gets into creating Manchurian candidates, split personality spies, and information couriers, people that will carry the V2K. So they'll say, we're the Russian government, we're the Chinese government, we're evil aliens, we're Satan's, satanic ritual abuse. And I've heard all the stories. One guy believed it was some 14-year-old kid with an Xbox that lived next door. The trickery really is that great when you're under hypnosis that people will believe something other than a massive government could do this. And so anyway, my interview with Len, he very well described a typical breakdown script that's used on almost all the TI victims. TI stands for targeted individuals. Some of them are pretty crazy. They have names like Alice in Wonderland, Wizard of Oz, and those are the confusion tactics. And when they're breaking down the ego of the human through all the pains and tortures and the verbal breakdown, these are typical CIA torture scripts.
That's the thing. The rest of the cases, they were sent back to the CIA to handle them internally.
Well, don't worry, Stephen. I think a few of them were fired.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. The rest of the cases, they were sent back to the CIA to handle them internally, whatever the hell that.
Where do you
Think
think
about
you
that.
work?
CIA.
That must mean there is such a lack of fearing any sort of accountability. For crying out loud. While on assignment, 1,400? You must have not been doing any job.
Well, even if you had to look at it to make sure you knew what it was, don't you just need to look at one?
Right.
You're like, I better check the other 1,399
double-checking.
just to be safe.
Yes, I better
Each
check the other
file.
1,300 labeled tax things.
Unbelievable.
Oh my goodness.
And the guy with the 6-year-old?
Disgusting.
Twice.
Yeah, twice.
Twice with the 6-year-old.
So and here's the scariest part. Out of the 10 instances that are described in the report, only one person was ever charged with anything.
Yeah.
With anything. Comment below. Do you guys know this story? This should be catnip for the media, right? Think about it. You've got this lewd behavior. You've got corruption at the highest levels of government, right? Aaron Brockovich, something about fake tits and tap water.
Yeah.
The CIA, raping children and sexually assaulting children, and they're not being prosecuted? Where are you?
Had sexual contact with a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old. He was simply fired. One employee purchased sexually explicit videos of young girls filmed by their mothers. He resigned. One employee estimated that he had viewed up to 1,400 sexually abusive images of children while on agency assignments. Not sure what actions, if any, were taken by him. One contractor arranged for sex with an undercover FBI agent. I think that you mentioned that. Posing as a child, he had his contract revoked. One CIA staffer was charged with child sexual crimes, and the employee was also under investigation for mishandling classified material. The CIA did not answer detailed questions, saying only that the agency takes all allegations of possible criminal misconduct committed by personnel seriously. So you're saying the reason why they didn't take this more seriously, why there weren't actual prosecutions that were carried out, is because what they were trying to not only protect their agency, but trying to protect the country from being compromised in some way by our foreign enemies who would use this information in some kind of bribery scheme?
I think that it's actually quite worse than that. In my personal opinion, my analysis based on this is that they know that we're already compromised, and they don't want to have to admit how compromised we are by these foreign adversaries, by these foreign intelligence agencies. They know we're compromised, and they don't want it all spilling out into court. So they'll go over to FBI, they'll go over to DOJ and say, hey, don't worry, we're taking care of this. Hey, don't worry, we'll take care of this guy. Don't worry about that. Don't ask any questions. We don't want those secrets coming out in court. We know the FBI does this. Time and again, just like in the Kyle Rittenhouse case, where the FBI was able to testify off camera, completely in silent, and then their testimony was stricken from the record, so we couldn't even get a public review of what the transcript was, what the FBI testimony was in the Kyle Rittenhouse case, because we know they were conducting surveillance of this entire thing. It's the exact same thing, and I was told behind the scenes in that case, they said we don't want our operation spilling out into court and people talking about it on YouTube. That's a direct quote.
Wow. Okay, here's more from this, and we'll finish this and then move on to the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. But sexual crimes involving children, says BuzzFeed, including the viewing of images of abuse, have been uncovered at other agencies that handle sensitive information. In a November 2009 report, the Department of Defense acknowledged that dozens of Pentagon staff members or contractors had such images. In 2014, the Inspector General of the Intelligence Community found that 2 officials from the National Reconnaissance Office, which oversees America's spy satellites, acknowledged viewing images of child sexual abuse during polygraph examinations. This is so disturbing. At a symposium in 2016, Daniel Payne, a top Pentagon security official, said that when workers' computers were examined, the amount of child porn I see is just unbelievable. Is this something that is happening for whatever reason with more frequency in our intelligence agencies, or is this something that is more pervasive in the general population than I originally realized? I mean, what's going on here? This is so bizarre. Remember, it's so evil.
Allie, we're told, and when I was put through recruitment into the intel community, you're put through polygraphs, you're put through a rigorous selection process. Why aren't these people weeded out? Why are so many pedophiles allowed to be given top-level security clearance? Remember, these aren't just people walking in off the street and saying, hey, can I get hired? Can I get a job? You're put through an extremely rigorous background check screening process. It's called an SSBI, single scope background investigation. There are people, they interview you, they interview your family, they interview your contacts, they go through your online footprint, they go through everything. So why is it that when they're going through these footprints, they're not checking, these digital footprints, they're not checking for so many pedophiles getting through their ranks? If it were up to me, you need to go into Congress, and Congress needs to launch a brand new church committee, number 1, to talk about domestic surveillance operations, but number 2, to ask the question, why are there so many pedophiles sitting behind